Ever get that gut feeling that something's off in your relationship, but you can't quite name it? In this episode, we're going to call out 8 dating red flags you shouldn't ignore, from ghosting after I love you to boundary bulldozing and emotional whiplash. We're unpacking the behaviors that scream, proceed with caution. If you're dating or even thinking about it, this show is for you. Today on Off the Couch. And welcome to Off the Couch with Dr. Greg, where psychology meets everyday life. Did you notice our new logo, Brian? Did you notice?
Yes, I'm excited. I love this logo. Honestly, I'm really happy with it.
Yeah, we did have a green couch, which, I liked. But, it was just a green couch, though. But this is more to my liking. It's kind of cool and very Jetsons vibe, which, let's face it, is there a more perfect time than the 1960s space age? It was such an amazing time. Or were the Jetsons in the 50s? I think it was probably early 60s. I don't know. But anyway, welcome to Off the Couch. That's our new logo. We're going to be using it from now on. But today we're going to be talking about dating. Are you dating someone who seems great, but just something feels off? We will break down those 8 research-backed warning signs that make your that your maybe could be a major mistake. Let me just say that these are about research-backed. That was really important to me. These are not just personal opinions, but at the end, I'm going to give some personal opinions about some things that maybe aren't backed by research that I call the honorable mentions. And Brian, you have some too, don't you?
Yes, for sure.
But we have Brian Gomez, producer, with us. Hi, Brian.
Happy Monday, you guys.
And then we also have Tony Sweet on the board.
Hello, everybody.
And Tony, though you're a happily married man, I hope you give us some of your dating don'ts as well.
I am an expert.
I think that'd be a sexpert at some point.
Amen.
We're gonna talk about dating a dud, the 8 warning signs, and why these red flag matters. Well, research has identified several early warning signs in dating that can predict problems in long-term relationships or marriage. And these red flags are grounded in psychological science and longitudinal studies. Brian, what's a longitudinal study? Oh my God.
When it's like a big number. It's not like a down study, right?
It's something that's gone on for a long time.
Oh, well,
like longitudinal.
Just kidding.
No, it's just funny to me because I feel hurt. That you haven't listened. You haven't listened when we've talked about those in the past.
No, because we've always talked about the other kind.
Well, we talk about both. We've talked about meta-analyses, longitudinal studies, and the kind of cross-sectional studies. I mean, there are different types of studies.
I only remember the meta ones.
Yeah, meta-analyses are interesting because you're kind of looking at study of studies. But those have their shortcomings too. There is no perfect study, that is for sure. But longitudinal, we typically really consider strongly because they've gone over a long time, and you start to see long-term effects of things.
So this is really solid science we're about to talk about.
Well, it's based on some solid science. But let's start with the first one. This is absolutely solid. Number 1 is the 4 horsemen, and it's called the 4 horsemen of the relationship apocalypse. Number 1, it actually has 4 of them we have as part of it. The number 1 thing is contempt, which is sarcasm, mocking, eye-rolling. There's criticism. I'll just read them all. Criticism attacking the character of the other person, like saying you're so selfish, you're such a terrible person. Defensiveness, which is refusing responsibility. Counter-blaming. Well, it's you did this, well, you did that. And then stonewalling, which is emotionally withdrawing or shutting down. Actually, all of these are bad, but the number 1, contempt, is considered the sulfuric acid of relationships. Contempt is when you look down upon somebody. I like to think of it as getting on your emotional high horse and really looking at somebody in a negative way. And if this shows up early in dating, don't think it's going to get any better. it will get worse as time goes on, because the person has to learn to value you as a human being, as an equal, and as someone who is on the same page as they are. Otherwise, they're going to continually run over you. Does this seem familiar to you?
Well, I'm trying to think. I'm like running through the files. I'm like, have I dealt with anything like this? But I don't think so. I've had like, a few horrible boyfriends before, but nothing close to that, at least.
Well, there's criticism, which that's attacking the character. Now, I have remedies for all of these, because we deal with these in relationships. Actually, all 4 of these are things that hurt relationships in general. So we try to help people avoid all 4 of these in a relationship. But when they show up early on, it's a very much a red flag. I mean, if there's anyone, we could spend the whole show on these 4, because these are probably the 4 worst that we're going to talk about, but all the other ones you'll understand why we picked them as well. Criticism is attacking the character, like saying you're so selfish, but the remedy for that is to complain. So instead of saying you're so selfish, you could say what it is that you observed that caused you to say that why they are selfish, like that they ate all the candy bars in the bowl. I think that would be you, Brian.
No, well, I would consider myself a complainer. If I feel like, if I'm upset or something, I'm like, oh, I'm going to tell you why.
Well, that's okay to do, because that gives them a chance to say, oh, I'm, sorry about that. I wasn't thinking, or I'm, was super hungry, or whatever they're going to say. But at least they could give you some answer to that. But if you call somebody selfish, they're not going to be as open to talking about things. In fact, they're just going to think of what they have to throw at you, what bomb they have to throw at you.
Yeah, I've been trying to make sure as I get older, just communication is like a big part of it.
Communication's the big one. Now, going back to defensiveness, I think that criticism and defensiveness go hand in hand, because when someone criticizes you, you often feel then defensive. And defensiveness is especially bad when someone refuses responsibility, because that's why if you complain to somebody, it makes it easier for them to say, oh, I took, oh, yeah, you're right, I did that, and I'm sorry about that, and they take responsibility. Usually the argument's over at that point. But if you refuse responsibility and then start pointing your finger back at the other person, it only heightens the disagreement.
That I've dealt with, though, where I have brought something up and then the other person will try to defend either somebody else's actions or their own actions by like saying, oh, that's not what it was like, or, that's not what I was meaning to do. But I'm like, if I'm telling you what's happening and you're defending it, it kind of really sucks the life out of it all.
And stonewalling's the last one. I want to come back to that as well, because stonewalling's the rarest one. Stonewalling is when someone emotionally withdraws, they shut down, they won't talk about something, but we still see it quite a bit. It may not be the most common of the 4, but we still see it. And there is a flip side to stonewalling that's even worse, which is not talked about very much because it's so universally agreed upon as bad. Because generally a person who's stonewalling is withdrawing. They're pulling in emotionally. But what is pushing out emotionally? What is when you explode emotionally? What could that cause?
You're asking about like rage and anger?
Yeah, rage and anger, and maybe even physical violence. So generally when someone is in this mode, stonewalling, it really is kind of a delicate dance to get them to thaw out, to be able to start to come back, to be able to communicate about what's going on. Otherwise, you could kick the tripwire and cause them to become very upset. Tony, you're in a relationship.
I am.
Have you recognized any of these 4 in your relationship?
Or previous relationship.
Or previous.
Right. Actually, one of the first relationships that I've had when I was out as a gay man he was becoming a attorney, and he would criticize everything I did because I think it made him feel better about who he was. Like, because I had more of an accent back then. He would make fun of my accent. He would make fun of anything I did. But I think he was more jealous because I was more popular. But
look at you. You're Sandra D.
yeah. I mean, it was just people. He was just a jerk, and a lot of people liked me because I was a nice guy. It was more that. And but he just criticized everything. I do remember, and I always thought afterwards, I was like, man, that guy's a jerk, and I was ready to be over. But my current relationship,
You're like, I
Ryan,
can
Go back. Because when you met that guy, who was the jerk, how soon did you see that behavior that he started criticizing you?
very, very quickly.
Very quickly.
Quickly. I mean, it was maybe a 6 months relationship. And I did end it, but it was, and then when I ended it, he was almost a stalker afterwards.
Yeah.
But it was not, like I said, I would honestly rather have a physical hit than a verbal hit. And that made a big impact on how I felt about relationships for a while after that.
Well, I'm not going to diagnose, but I mean, his insecurity and his narcissism certainly is coming through rather clearly.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry to hear that, Tony.
I had a friend like that who I thought was my best friend, and would constantly throw digs, and it'd be like, oh, he's just playing. But some of those digs, you're like, I don't know. But he was also an alcoholic and seemed like was going through a lot too. So
there you go. Let's move on to number 2. Number 2 is low empathy or emotional unavailability. So low empathy, we don't like that. That's someone who comes across as dismissive or lacks emotional curiosity. Okay, by the way, I just can't even go on without talking about an experience I had. I went on a trip with a friend of mine. It's somebody in my profession. I guess that doesn't give it away. It's embarrassed to say. I went with a psychologist. We went to a convention. And, you like to go, share a room, share expenses. It's going to make it a little more financially easier to go. Well, this person, we would go out to restaurants. It was a woman, because I can't hide that part. This person was so dismissive of service personnel, like with waitresses and other people, just was like, just condescending. It just came across that way, just dismissive. That was the number one thing I saw. And I even had to say to her at dinner, I finally just was like, do you realize how you treat the waitresses, in this restaurant? Like how you've been doing that? And she said, yeah, dismissive. Like she knew it, owned it.
Oh, wow.
That's scarier.
And
I wouldn't have guessed.
No problem with it. But I will tell you, the turn on a dime feeling I had toward her was like, if she doesn't see this as a problem, we can't be friends. And it was awkward. And then that was pretty much it. Yeah.
There's nothing worse than that, where it's like, where do you feel better than somebody else? Like you're above them and you can treat somebody like that.
That's one of my biggest turnoffs, is treating other people not well.
I don't care how much money you have or where you think you are in life. Like there's no reason for that.
In fact, I had a ex-friend now, that was a psychologist, that was a woman, that also I went to dinner with her, and she treated, that was the first time I ever was like, I don't know if this is the same.
We will be talking after the show.
Yes.
Watch it be the same person.
I was just like, the way she treated the waiter, I was just like, oh, I'm like, that's not cool.
Yeah, not cool.
Yeah.
The other type, the way low empathy and emotional unavailability might come across, is prioritizing logic over feelings. Like when people are like, when you say you're really hurt by something, well, you shouldn't be hurt. I mean, come on. Here's this, I think that you shouldn't be hurt. Here's what you should do. So instead of emotionally validating, you're actually just saying what they should feel and maybe even trying to problem solve rather than going, oh, yeah, that's a bummer. And this actually is not a good thing to see right away in a relationship. You at least want someone to try to get on your page. We don't always understand what someone else's reality is like, but we do try to generally get on their page. And if they are just charging us to be logical and not emotional, they're basically charging us to do what they want. So what this leads to is it's actually linked in research to lower relationship satisfaction in the future. So if you marry someone with low empathy or emotional unavailability, you may be in for a less happy relationship. Number 3 now, inconsistency between words and actions. I mean, this should have gone without saying, but unfortunately, some people are just fine with somebody saying something and then doing something else. This is plain old hypocrisy, people, when you say one thing, but you do another. Do you know people who are Hippocratic? Who not are
A lot of people
You
in this
do?
town. But I just I was thinking like, well, why do we stick around through all these things? Because, at some point in life, we've all kind of interacted or
So
stuck
this
through
is a
something like
great question that I didn't intend to answer on this show, but let me just say that we all are attracted to things. Tony, Brian, myself, we're all attracted to positives and we're attracted to certain negatives. But why we're attracted to those negatives is not because we like them. It's because we want to correct them.
I was going to say, is it
Sorry.
because sometimes it feels comfortable? That's what I was going to say. But
Feeling comfortable isn't necessarily about liking it, though. And
No,
even
definitely.
it's not even like, okay, I'm familiar with this, but it's more like, okay, I know this monster.
yes, that's what.
And
Yeah.
this monster, I think I can change.
Oh,
or this monster,
yeah.
I think if I can just get them, let's say, to stop being so narcissistic, then I can prove that the narcissist does, in fact, love me.
Because we do often go for like emotionally unavailable people, I would say.
Possibly so. Like some people do.
Yeah.
Not
I mean,
everyone.
I've been there, that I'm like, oh, well, is that something I'm just familiar with, That I'm like, oh, it's crazy. I didn't think about that we are attracted to the bad parts too.
I do think it's good to call out hypocrisy when you see it in somebody, because we're all struggling. We're all human beings. We all have positive intentions, and then we may not do something very well. We may say that we're going to go on a diet and stop eating so many processed foods, and then we pick up the donut packet and pop one in our mouth.
That sounds good.
Is that hypocrisy? Sort of, but that you can. It's something to work on. And it's an area of work. So I'm not trying to say it's an absolute bad thing all the time. But when you start to see someone, saying how much human rights mean to them and then violating someone else's rights, like in the next half hour, then you can really look and go, wait a minute, how does that really work for you? And call it out. What hypocrisy does is it actually creates mistrust and instability in the relationship, and it undermines emotional safety because you never really know where you stand. When the person talks about where they are, you never know where they actually really are, because that their words are not necessarily what they're going to do. You're smiling, Brian.
Oh, no. I was just thinking about I have this really weird thing about time that my mom used to always lie whenever I'd be like, oh, how far away are you or anything? And she'd be like, I'm 5 minutes away. And then it's 30 minutes later and she's still not home or something, that I'm like, oh, it's one of my big arcs, then I'm like, I mean, but you're right how you were talking about it. You lose trust in those words, you know?
And what do you think she was doing that for? What was her purpose?
I don't know. I never asked her, but I feel like she was just always not on time, or would tell me a certain time and it wouldn't be that. And it still bugs me to this day. It's like such a big issue for me in life that I hate when people are like not accurate about the time they told me.
I'll be there in 30 minutes and to be there in 30 minutes.
Exactly. You know?
Oh, me too. Me too. But I think people do that in general because they feel like they don't want to disappoint you, or they don't want to hear the negative reaction. They want to maintain some sort of positive because they know the negative is coming. But what they do is they set themselves up for an even greater fall.
Yeah. But that's why I was like, oh,
yeah, I get it.
You know,
I get it. So the way to your heart then apparently is to tell you they'll be there in 5 minutes and then to show up late.
That is the worst thing to do. Yeah, I'm super the time management. Nope.
So number 4, you are good about being on time.
I am, because it's such a big
I will
deal
say
for
Brian
me.
is good for that.
Like I calculated to
And one thing about my business, I don't think I was always this way, but with my business, I became so attentive to time because I have to, like, if I start an appointment even a minute late, it's late. Because people are paying for time with me.
You know how many psychologists I went to that were late constantly? A lot over the years. Like they would be 10, 15 minutes late, and then they would end on time. Like they would end at the up, and I'm like,
my mouth is agape.
No, I've multiple times over the years.
heck no.
Oh,
Have you been left
that wouldn't
jobs?
happen with me. I can't even believe this is the case. That's so bad.
Yeah, it
I mean,
drives me crazy.
literally, I apologize if I'm a minute after, like I have to run to the bathroom, or once I knocked over a plant in my office. I mean, literally, the whole file cabinet fell over. The plant on top fell. All the dirt fell onto the rug. I swear to you, I had to pick up the file cabinet, put the files back in, messy, just kind of shove them back in, close it, took the plant, put it back up, did the best I could, vacuumed all the dirt, and still got out to see the client on time. I was a little proud of myself for that one. But he's like, oh, I heard a bunch of commotion in there. The client said that to me, and I said, yeah, I knocked that over, and I had to clean it up.
That's when they don't pay their bills.
So number 4, let's go to number 4. That is controlling behavior or jealousy. So jealousy, this is jealousy, monitoring, isolation from others. Isolation from others, like separating you from your family, from your friends, even your career. It's like trying to pull you apart, trying to get you to move to a place you don't want to move to, trying to, you don't need to see your mother this weekend, or your best friend, there's something wrong with her. That kind of put down that starts to pull people away from their friends and family. Also jealousy that, if they're going to go, let's say they're talking to a man at work and they're talking about that with their boyfriend, oh yeah, they're talking to my boss and he said this and that. What's your boss look like? Does he have his eyes on you? You have to listen to the questions. If these come out early, this is a really bad sign. Now, we're all kind of flattered a little bit when someone's a little jealous. No,
at the beginning.
At the beginning, when they're like, but usually you watch how they handle the jealousy. So,
yeah.
Why are you looking at me?
Oh no, I'm just thinking.
Are you this person?
No. And luckily, I haven't had to deal with that. That's why I'm like, oh, thank goodness. Like, I would hate to deal with somebody trying to control my life or pull me away. And I wouldn't want to pull somebody away from their life that they already have. Like, with relationship-wise, I would want somebody to have their own friends, their own career, everything like that. I feel like it's
me
a little
too.
weird, if you're too intertwined.
Yeah, I always think talking attachment style, which we will as part of these, but I'm always a little bit like, if I lean anyway, it's a little bit avoidant in the sense of I like when people have their own lives, their own friends, their own family. I love to watch how they interact with their family. I love to watch people succeed in their careers, and if they have friends, I like to meet them and get to know them, and hopefully I'll like them too. But that doesn't mean you don't always like people. You don't always like family members, and that's going to be the case. And sometimes you'll be really upset about career. I will say about if jealousy comes out in you and it's not a frequent behavior, pay attention.
That's what I was going to say. I wouldn't want to be with somebody that makes me feel uneasy or makes me feel like I have to be jealous or any sort of way. Anybody that I feel like shifts the way I feel about something or has me feeling worried, I feel like there's an issue.
There is.
I dated somebody years and years ago that was like that. If I didn't get jealous, it bothered him, and he would overly try to make me jealous. And and eventually I was...
That's not good.
Eventually I was like, should I be jealous? I was like, then I thought, well, maybe, is there something going on? Because he would just overly try to make me jealous. I'm going out with my friends, and you can't go with us. And I'm like, okay. And it would bug him because I'd be like, okay. And but he would try and try and try and try, yeah.
So this is bad because, and you obviously this is not the person you ended up with, because this often linked to emotional abuse and dissatisfaction in the relationship. It's a controlling behavior.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So number five sort of goes back to number one a little bit in the Four Horsemen, but number 5 is poor conflict resolution skills. Let's talk about poor conflict resolution skills. It could be escalation, like, amping up the argument even more, shutting down the other person. It could be power struggles. It's actually a truism in psychology that conflict style matters more than conflict frequency. Let me say that again. Conflict style, or how you argue, how you have conflict or don't have conflict, how you do that is more important than frequency.
And what do you mean by frequency? Like how many times?
How many times you fight?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like, so if I see a couple that quibbles back and forth and has back and forth conflicts, I'm not necessarily bothered by that if they frequently resolve it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like, okay. Don't, you brought that, I don't like that color. Well, I don't, keep your mind to yourself. And then they're just fine. Okay. Some people, that is their style. But if they are having these conflicts in a way that become explosive. In fact, we have something we talk about in conflict. You watch couples. This is just inside the therapy room, because you watch couples, and if they have what we call a fast startup, like that means they go into arguments very fast. Like all of a sudden something happens and boom, it's like they stepped on a landmine and they're off to the races. That's you?
Me.
Dude, that's not a good sign.
I know. But for me, it's like if I'm telling you what's wrong and you're not understanding, I'm going to scream it at you until you understand it.
It's a good thing I'm so understanding.
Right. Or just say, I understand.
That's all I need to say.
Just lie?
No, I'm like, I don't know. I guess that's my frustration, where it's like where if I'm telling you what's wrong and you're telling me that that's not what's wrong or what's happening, then I'm like, I have an issue with that.
But it's a good point. When you're talking about a problem for you, you do want the other person to understand. You want them to validate. I do try to talk to couples about this in general, not new couples only, any couple, that when somebody says, here's my problem, that you say, you try to do your best to understand the problem. Like, try to understand what it's like in their shoes. Don't try to solve the problem.
Or be defensive.
But don't try to solve it. Don't be defensive. Don't try to push it back on them. Don't be logical. try to understand what they're struggling with. And if worse comes to worse, just listen. That's number one. If you want to really use your lips, use it to repeat the words they just said. You can repeat the words they just said, and then that will be more helpful. Tony's mind went right into the gutter with that. His apologies.
But that's why I get I start really fast and I get heated if I'm having a discussion and then my point isn't, getting across. But I call that, woman brain to man brain, where the guy is usually I don't get it. Why are you so upset?
Well, if a guy is saying, why I don't get it, why are you so upset? At least he's trying a little bit, not a great way. I would say back it up and don't say anything. Just listen. And then maybe repeat the words back to the other person. Then you're going to start to get it more.
I think there's nothing more, like Brian says, if I have an issue or a problem, because I've learned over the years not to say you. I always say I'm feeling
good,
this
man.
way.
Yes.
Good,
Because
man.
I've learned because then it's putting them on defensive. But I'm saying I'm feeling this way, and they're like, "There's no problem," or then what's your problem? And then that's where
That's not good.
That gets into more of a heated.
But see, that's emotional invalidation. So I always try to tell couples that when a partner is trying to tell you something, when they're trying to convey emotional information, they're basically an electric wire filled up. They have all this electricity, and they're trying to do something with that electricity. If you refuse that electricity, then by saying, well, that's stupid, or you shouldn't feel that way, or here's what you should do because I'm obviously the expert on all things your life,
Right.
then the person just gets more upset. It's as if their electricity just shocks back on themselves. They become more and more upset. But if you do something which I call emotional validation, I think a lot of people call it that. I didn't come up with it. But if you validate somebody, which means you demonstrate understanding for the person, just listening, repeating the words back, trying to really understand what it's like to be in their shoes, that does something really magical with the electricity. It grounds it. So it won't hurt you as the person who's understanding because they're the ones suffering. But what it does is it helps to ground their suffering so they know you're on their side. And that is the key.
Yeah, I think that way you said being on their side is such a big thing because sometimes I feel like when they're being defensive, now it's now we're fighting. Now you're on the opposite side, and now you and I have an issue more than what was happening. Yeah.
Number 6, avoidant or anxious attachment styles. Boy, it's all the rage talking about attachment styles, so I couldn't help it. But this is somewhat research-based. But my problem with all the stuff on TikTok and all the attachment style stuff is it's kind of gone completely overboard. There are only a few attachment styles, and it doesn't, even if you have secure attachment, it doesn't mean you don't have problems. So if you have an anxious or avoidant attachment style, you still can have quite successful relationships. It doesn't mean there's something wrong with you, but it does mean you might have some struggles. What we're talking about here, what you might notice in the beginning of dating, is someone with an avoidant attachment style. Attachment style might be more dismissive than usual, which we talked about why that's bad, and more emotionally distant. So when you see those signs, you don't have to label them avoidant, but definitely pay attention to the behavior. The other is anxious attachment style, which is somebody who's too clingy or fears abandonment. And gosh, tell me about do you know what? Why you? Is that you?
No.
Oh.
No.
I love
I
how
was
he's
just
like, "Is that
wondering what
you?"
you were going to tell me.
Well, we hadn't talked about this one. We talked about avoidant type behaviors because that was in a different finding. But we haven't talked about clingy people or fearing abandonment. And this was always an interesting one to me because I think personally I don't struggle with this one, for God knows what reason. But I don't, I think it's always interesting because I'm like, well, if someone leaves, then, I mean, I don't mean to be, it's painful. It hurts. It's devastating, but is it the end?
Maybe. Clearly, you can see which one I am. I don't know. Sometimes it just feels like it's a lot, and sometimes I'm like, oh, I would rather have not invested that time. It hurts. I take it personal.
To me, there is no wasted time. There's no wasted time in relationships. Every relationship teaches us something. Every relationship is a gift.
Yes, and I've learned that along the way. I've learned to just appreciate the experiences of everything, But I feel like in the past, it's been very and then it hurts more to see somebody else move on like nothing. Like, it was totally fine to them, and you're just like, I'm heartbroken and broken into a million pieces, But yeah.
I was definitely the fear of abandonment up till about 12 or 13 years ago. And then after that, I think I don't know, adult hit me or something. I don't know.
But haven't you been in your current relationship for 12 or 13
No.
years?
8.
8?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But even this one, even though it's a great relationship, we're strong, I know it's going hopefully for the rest of our lives, I know now in my heart I could be okay without him.
Perfect.
It's beautiful.
I mean, I hate to say it, but yeah, that's good. That'll make you stronger in the relationship.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, when I always said and I know he's that way. He's like, whatever. If it doesn't work out, hey, whatever. But I just know when two people feel that way, you appreciate each other better.
I do try to tell all couples that basically we're all on a trapeze act. We're all trying to, in a single trapeze, trying to meet in the middle and grab onto the other one's hands. But to do that with the least bit of fear, we have to have an emotional safety net below. The emotional safety net below is what you just talked about, Tony, that you can be okay if you fall.
Yeah.
So there you go. Number 7, lack of shared values or life goals. This is when strong chemistry can't overcome the value clashes. What are values? Things like family, finances, faith, ambition. Those kinds of mismatches can lead to friction. So, I always say values are like a point on the horizon that you're always going to. They're not goals. They're the point on the horizon you're always going to. And I have seen this really hurt couples in the past. They got along so well in every other way, but not having the same values can really rock the boat. And what that can also lead to, it not only leads to friction, but it can cause what I call soul-sucking compromise, where one person gives up something that they really love in order to be with the other person. And that can go on for a while until it really starts to hurt. And when I was doing this research, I thought about trad wives. I would have to think trad wives, the traditional wives, like someone who stays at home, doesn't work, it's a woman, blah, 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 makes brownie videos on TikTok and whatnot, so this is what they do. That's fine if that is what they want, if that is within their value system. It's not fine if they're playing a role to please somebody else.
Or I wouldn't want to date somebody that was super involved with their family, too close to their family, talks to them all the time, every day, or they're in each other's businesses. I don't know. It's a little too close for me. So that wouldn't work out for me. And especially if their family sucks.
Yeah, and I grew up in a town where 3/4 of the people were my family, so everybody was in your business.
You couldn't avoid it.
You couldn't avoid it. And so I think now, in fact, that's one thing, and I can talk about, Will was maybe my mom and dad can move in with it. And I was like, no. No. I wouldn't even let my own mother and father move in with me.
Same.
So it'd be no. So, yeah, that was actually one of our issues, but now we're good. Now it's like, yeah, I think we're good.
But yeah, it's a big one.
Yeah.
And number 8, disrespect for boundaries. This is the old boundary one. Repeatedly pushing emotional, sexual, and time boundaries. There are different types of boundaries. And this can be bad. This can actually cause all kinds of problems, like forcing you to talk about something you're not ready to talk about. Pushing you past sexual boundaries because they want to do something that you're not comfortable with. Or time boundaries, that's sexual boundaries. And with time boundaries, very interesting. This is somebody who, let's say, tries to trap you. Let's say to have that argument when you're late for work. That is breaking a time boundary. So this can actually be extremely destructive, and this can be, that early sign may escalate and become more serious abuse later. It leads to dominance and control issues. Smile there, Brian.
Oh, I'm just smiling because I don't know if you guys have seen that meme on Instagram where they're like, "Oh, I'm Googling stuff about toxic boyfriends, and it's describing everything about myself instead." I was like, "Am I the toxic one?"
Hey, we all have that possibility. And this is to say, if you notice these things, you can get help for them. It doesn't mean this is something where you throw in the towel immediately. You want to make sure that these traits are something that if they're a red flag, they're a warning sign. Either they can be fixed or they can't, but you better pay attention. Now, number 9 is we're going to do honorable mentions really quickly because we're at the end. My number 9 is how they treat service personnel. But I kind of talked about that in an earlier one. But it really bugs me when I see somebody treat anyone who may be of lower status than they are, and like service personnel, they're there to do a job and to serve you. Like, be respectful of that person. Also, notice how they treat their children, their ex, and their family. Like, those types of relationships are things you need to pay attention to, because whatever you see there may come back right around to you.
No, I agree. The whole about their ex, I'm like, oh, how they ended that relationship or how that relationship was, I feel like can say a lot about them too.
Yeah. Yeah. And I also have another honorable mention, which is people who say it's just business when they're talking about bad behavior they did at work, like where they talked about, again, trampling on somebody else's rights, and you ask them about it, and they say, well, it's just business, Yeah, I ripped them off, I lied to them, it's just business. Well, be prepared for that transactional relationship to come right back around, and when you are sitting there across from an attorney in divorce court, they're going to be treating you like it's just business. So be very careful.
And even worse, because that's their money. Like, they're fighting for their money in that room.
I actually went into business years ago with a friend of mine, really good friend of mine, and he had money, and he said, "Oh," and he was laughing when he said, he goes, "Oh, by the time this is over, you're going to hate me," and I thought it was a joke, and within a year, he was we end up walking away not friends at all.
So he was this guy.
He was that guy.
Wow.
He goes, it's just business. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
People think it's an excuse for bad behavior, but in fact, that bad behavior is not limited to just business.
Yeah.
Yeah. What other huge warning signs do you guys see?
The way they treat pets.
The way they treat pets. Excellent.
Yeah. How, like, if they even really care about them. Like, if they have a pet and they just never really pay attention to it, or they're not sweet to it. You could tell.
Yeah.
It's like, can you love something?
Good.
Even
Good.
politics sometimes.
Politics.
That's the
Big one, I'm
biggest
sure,
one.
now.
Well, that goes into value difference, I think, because it's I have to say, yeah. And I always feel like I can be with somebody who has different political views than me, but they can't have necessarily different values than like to treat people inhumanely. Like, I would never stand for that, or to, those types of things.
I feel like before I'd be like that, but now I'm like, you better be on the same boat as I am, or else I'm drowning you.
I hear you. I hear you.
That's just right now in this time, maybe another time, but now.
And any other things? clean, dirty house.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I hate it.
Doesn't bother me at all.
Really?
No. Isn't that funny? I don't know.
A dirty,
No.
stinky house.
Well, dirty, stinky house.
Well, just
Oh, well,
dirty.
you know, like clutter, I don't mind.
Clutter's,
I don't mind. I don't like too austere of a house. I've gone into houses that look like museums, and I'm like, this looks like there's no soul in this
Yeah.
house.
I actually had a client when I was a personal trainer. You walk in, it was a museum. It was like, this is weird.
Yeah,
It was
or
weird.
like, or there's like, nothing in the house. Maybe a single vase and like a couch and a chair and maybe a
That's
table.
serial killer behavior right there.
And if he's a serial killer.
Just
That-
plastic,
that's true.
just
Yeah,
plastic on the ground.
How
Yeah,
cute is
serial
it, though?
killers
Yeah,
would
no,
be
right,
bad.
right.
So let's go back over the 8 dating red flags. We have a thing. The 8 dating red flags are contempt, criticism, defensiveness, and stonewalling, also known as the 4 horsemen. Low empathy or emotional unavailability. Inconsistency between words and actions, controlling behavior or jealousy, poor conflict resolution skills, avoidant or anxious attachment styles, lack of shared values or life goals, disrespect for boundaries, and avoidant or anxious attachment styles, plus anything else we added into this mix. All those things can add up to a bad relationship, so watch out for those red flags. That wraps up the show for today. Reminder to like, subscribe, to give us 5 stars. We got a lot more traction in the last month on our YouTube site, so thank you for that. Also, the other podcasts are doing. There are a lot of podcasts doing well. YouTube page, go to youtube.com/Dr. Greg. And if you have any questions or topics, hit us up on the socials at Ask Dr. Greg. This is Dr. Greg, Brian, and Tony Sweet bidding you farewell. Until next time, be present, be flexible, and be kind.